Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Season 2, Episode 6 of Shadow and Bone. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, let's pick up with Bagra, Mel, and Alina as they're Mal and Alina, who are all looking for the Firebird. And obviously, Bagra wants Alina to promise her to never go down the route of Merzos because it's like, right, it's killing my son right now, but if you decide to go down that route to make your shadow, your warriors of light, if you do that, it won't be until after the fact that you learn like what it is that it's going to cost you in the long run. So never go down that route. So that's the whole point of being able to find a Firebird, because it's supposed to kind of mitigate, give her less of a reason to go down that route. And she's also talking about the cut. But it's like, yeah, the cut's always there with you. You just have to learn how to aim it and practice it. But it's like, nah, you can do enough damage without the cut, and kind of turns back to look at Mal, and Alina knows like where things kind of stand between both of them at this point. But Bagra gives us a little bit of a history lesson on Morozova, and we get the reveal that she is Morozova's daughter, meaning Kurgan is his grandchild. So it's almost, because apparently she's told Kurgan these stories ever since he was a little kid, so that's probably why he dived so deeply into the Morozova stuff, because it's like, right, it's my lineage, it's kind of my birthright, considering this was all kind of started by my grandfather. So it's like, if it was something my grandfather did, and these are his journals and everything, then that means in the long run, I have to be the one that's destined for this. Maybe that's even where his inflated ego thinking he's so important kind of stems from. But, I mean, we got into a very sad, tragic part of Bagra's history, where she accidentally killed her little sister, sliced her with the cut. And because her dad ended up, like, I guess, like, they were regular animals at one point in time. Like, the stag and the sea-whoop were regular creatures until he resurrected them with Merzos, making them into the amplifiers that they are. And he's also responsible for the third amplifier. And the fact is that she cut him off. That Bagra cut Alina off when she was like, oh, then he made the third, the Firebird, and she kind of cut him off. I guess that was kind of supposed to kind of tee up the twist later on, which I thought was kind of interesting. Because I thought was interesting too, because like out of nowhere, she starts taking such an interest in Mal's background. She's like, wait, didn't you would have walked past like 3 orphanages? He's like, yeah, but I ended up at the one Alina was at, because he's like, I don't know, it felt like home. And she was figuring something out. I kind of expected it earlier when she's like, oh yeah, the only thing that could open this door is Morozova blood. So I almost thought like, wait, is she going to get Mal to open it? But she opened it. I'm like, oh, I guess never mind then. Especially later on when she wanted to talk to Mal alone. I'm like, what is this all about? And it turns out Mal and her are related. I mean, we find out that Mal is the Firebird, because her Bagra's dead sister, like there's some stories about Morozova and what they did to him as retribution for him doing what he did. Like, when the whole thing, like, they did something and I don't think it was full blown the same, but I guess if I had to make a comparison, almost sounds like they Rasputin him. Once again, I don't remember if it's true, but you hear that thing in history of like, yeah, they shot, poisoned, stabbed, and drowned Rasputin, and just like, he just wouldn't die. So I can't remember, because she even said in this episode, but she made it sound like, would that really have been able to kill my father? Like, that's what I'm so curious about. Because I was about to say at the end, I was like, isn't Morozova, like, you know, her and Kurgan have been around for hundreds of years. Probably her even longer. But I'm like, wouldn't he still be alive? But the stories is that he was killed, but she was implying, like, would it really be that easy to kill him? So part of me is like, is Morozova like out there in this world, or was he actually killed, but it actually took a little bit more than people kind of made it seem like? I don't know. I feel like I probably like missed some of those details there. But yeah, Mal is descended from Bagra's sister that was resurrected by their dad, and it's basically passed down the family generation until it's come to him. That's why he's, for one, why he was able to hear the stag, like hear that particular sound. So him finding the stag and the sea whip wasn't an accident. They're all the trifecta that is the stag, the firebird, and the sea whip are all longing to be connected. And he was able to sense them out, and that's why he couldn't find the Firebird. It's been him the entire time, and that's why he's always latched on to Alina so hard. And it's also, that's why out of any orphanage, he ended up at the one there. So it's like poetic in so many different ways. When even Alina wasn't even aware of what she was, she knew on some level she had to hide herself because she didn't want to take the chance she was a Grisha and she was going to be separated from Mal. Mal didn't think he was anything important. He just wanted to stay with Alina. You know, it's both they fell in love with each other, but there's also a cosmic, like, you're meant to be together. You're meant to be side by side. And, you know, that's a lot to kind of take in, because it also means Alina will have to kill him if she wants to get the power of the Firebird. And especially when you circle back to what Kerrigan brought up at the beginning of the season of like, right, that you're going to have to make sacrifices, which he made a sacrifice this episode, more so his mom did, but, you know, we'll get to that in a second. And now Alina's going to have to... I figured it in with that, though. I figured when they introduced it, I was like, that's got to be foreshadowing. She's going to have to kill Mal for whatever reason. And did I think that he was going to be an amplifier? No, but I figured in some shape or form, his sacrifice was going to be necessary in the grand scheme of things. And it seems like it totally is. I think it's so interesting. I mean, first and foremost, that Mal is related to Bagra. I mean, that's like her... Like, I'm going to say just great nephew, but obviously it's like... It's even like... It's great, who knows how many generations. But that old same thing is applicable in the case of Mal and Kerrigan being generation separated cousins, you know? So it's, and I also think that's ironic. Like, Mal and Kerrigan have been like face to face, like 2 times last season, and it's like, right, you were in front of this powerful amplifier and you had no idea, but it's kind of almost like the stag, where it's like the power wasn't yours to get, and so it went to Alina, it was hers, and same thing in Mal. Mal belongs with Alina, not you, and especially when Kerrigan's made this point of like, right, you and me, we're these 2 beings we're meant to be, but it's like, even more so than you 2 are meant to be, Alina and Mal are more so meant to be together. So I think that kind of cuts into their like cosmic connection of there's only 2 beings kind of like us out there, when in actuality Mal and Alina were literally kind of meant to be. Not even kind of, just straight up meant to be. So I think that's such an interesting development on that front. Especially, you know, it is a sad situation that Bagra sacrificed herself the way she did, but I think for her, it's like, well, for one, I've lived for so long and I've lost so much. I mean, her family cast her out. Her mom always thought of her as her father's abomination. She was, like, exiled from the family after what she did to her sister. You know, and it's like, especially because their dad made her watch as he built the coffin for her sister, knowing that she would never be in there. Like, Bagra, it's like all these hundreds of years later, it took me, like, I had my suspicions, but she never came back here because the trauma of it all made her just never want to come back. But it was time to confront her past, because all of that would eventually lead her to down the path she went, and she eventually gave birth to Kerrigan. Because for her, it's like, we're kind of a family of monsters. My father was a kind of a monster in his own right, and I became I was kind of one of my father's abominations, and that led to me making him an abomination of my own, my son. I didn't lead him down the right path. You know, it's one of her regrets that she can't change. Like, she's always been looking for redemption for him, but she had said, like, a couple episodes back, it's not worth it with you anymore. It's too late. So when the time came, she wanted to kind of save Alina from the connection, because I guess using the bones that were in the coffin, she used it as kind of an amplifier, and she was able to kind of hijack the connection, because it's like, right, it isn't just a connection between the stag that brought Alina and Kerrigan together. Because of the blood relation and kind of her tapping into it, she was able to kind of backtrace that connection to him, and she attacked him knowing that the shadows would, and they ended up killing her. But before she left, she made sure to slice off Kerrigan's hand, completely severing his connection to Alina. and his mom dies in his arm, and she's just like, you foolish boy, you stupid boy. Because for him, it's like, this isn't what I want. Like, the fact is, I can, like, make this all better. Like, we can, just give me a chance to make it. But it's like, no, we're past all that. You have to be stopped. Because you're not going to stop until the destruction of everything. So Mal ultimately ends up telling Alina the truth. And even before he's able to finish, she's like, no. But it's like, this is what I am, and this is what I'm meant to be. And he touches her, and she feels the power. But for her, it's like, no, we'll find another way. We have to go. We will leave here and stuff. But it's like, no, because that's the sad thing. She was so adamant about finding the Firebird. Now that she doesn't want it now, because it's like, no, it means killing Mal in the process. I mean, the whole thing with the stag was it was able to give its power to you, but ultimately it still had to die. So Mal could be an amplifier for you, but if she doesn't take the power, and ultimately if Kerrigan kills him first, he'll get the power. So it is a thing of she can't just like stay by Mal's side. That also means, I mean, obviously that whole setup of, oh, we'll travel the world together. I figured they would get divided because of like, if Mal like survived all this, I figured maybe him and Alina would have to go two separate ways. Like she'd have her responsibilities as the Sun Summoner, potentially the head of like the Second Army, and he'd be maybe more First Army or something else if he didn't die. But now it's like, that's all kind of a moot point. But it's like, right, like, I figured like their love was just gonna, it's kind of cursed in its own right, and things being what they are. So how they'll handle this, like you can tell Alina just has a reluctancy. She won't pull the trigger on that when she should. She should kill him now and take the power, but it's like, no, you're asking me to sacrifice someone that's always been important to me my entire life. The person I've latched onto, the person who's latched onto me. It's hard to kind of fully let that go, which Kerrigan now knows that Mal is the Firebird because Vladim ended up giving him the little bit of his mom's finger that was ground up and turned into an amplifier, and now he's also been giving like this kind of a la, like, I don't know what that arm, that hand is made out of. Kind of gives me, I mean, it's not the same thing, but it definitely gives me like Automail vibes, but obviously it's not. It's made out of something, and now with the amplifier it kind of works like it's his own hand. But now he ended up getting Bagra's last memories, which is also interesting too. I should also bring that up really quickly because I thought that was interesting. Alina had said, like, right when I saw the Sea Whip's last memory, it was of you. Now, I didn't notice that. Like, I noticed it focused on Mal, but I didn't know that it, like, she was like, yeah, there was no one else around. I didn't realize that, but I knew that it focused on Mal because I even said at the time, going back, if you listen to that episode, I was like, why did it only focus on Mal? Like, the fact is Mal happened to be the last thing it saw. So once again, it's like Mal found the stag. He ended up being the last thing that the Sea Whip saw. But it's like, yeah, because they knew what he was, that they were all meant to come together. The Sea Whip recognized him as the Firebird, like we were all meant to be. So that's why it focused on him. I mean, it attacked to kill the other two people, but it really, really honed in on Mal. And once again, now we understand why. So you have all of that. Then in Shuha, we're picking up with our crew that is all poison. Once again, just like I thought, Toya is slowing down his heart rate because like the less his heart's pumping, the less oxygen he's taking in. So he's slowing down his breathing so the poison isn't spreading throughout his body. And everyone is hallucinating and seeing different things. Based on Kaz's thing last episode, I was like, oh, it's got to be based on fear. But it's a combination of fear, but also good memories for her. The only person it seemed like it worked out positively for was Jesper, and I wonder, him being a Duress, does that play some role in that or not? Because everyone else had like a nightmarish situation except for Nej, because it was kind of her getting what she wanted, but it kind of taught her a lesson. Like Kaz, it taught him a lesson. What Toya pulled from his, we'll have to wait and see, because he went to his sister Tamar, and she was hurt. Because I forgot that she had talked about it, that like that necklace is how they find their way to each other. And he found his sister impaled, and it's like, who did this to you? And she's like, you did. And I guess he's worried and scared that he'll, like, I don't know if that's supposed to be a giant representation metaphor for you will be your sister's undoing, or like something's going to go wrong and you won't be able to protect her, or you will be directly responsible for hurting her. I don't know that feels like that could be interpreted multiple ways. But Kaz's situation was about stop pushing people away, because it's like, right, you think all that death and like revenge, like what has it left you with? Has it filled that hole in your heart? No. Like what do you have outside of revenge? If you live such a small life and do not connect with people, then what's the point of living? Like life is about making those connections, and he pushes so many people away. So it's like, what are you going to live for? With Inej, it's her kind of getting what she wants. It's her and Kaz, and they're touching and they're about to kiss, but for her it's like, no, this isn't real. I know this what it is. Like, this is what I want too, but that's just me giving into the poison. I know what's up, and she's the one that's able to kind of snap out of it. I mean, luckily, before he passed out, Toya what did get Wayland's attention, and ultimately the butterflies or moths or whatever that he was paying attention to ended up being the antidote. I thought because of the duress conversation that Jesper had with his mom, I thought maybe they wouldn't be able to get to Kaz in time, and there would be too much poison in his vein, and would take Jesper pulling it out. Because now we kind of learn about some of the points he brought up to Wayland last episode about me being in duress was a curse. Because it turns out that's how his mom died. His mom absorbed the poison out of someone, and it killed her. And because of that, his father made him promise, like, to never let people know who you were, that you would never sacrifice your life for another person. But his mom was like, you would put your life on the line for your friends. He's like, yes, but they never asked me to do that. They never asked me to do that as a Doris. I do it because, because like they do it because I'm a good shooter and I'm quite handsome and stuff. And I do love, like, he must have always had that kind of, I wonder, did he kind of get that from his mom, that personality of his? Or is it because his mom was very, like, receptive of it and loved that aspect of him? But for her, it's, you don't have to hide who you are. Kind of fully embrace what you are. And he hadn't, but I think ultimately he will, especially after all the conversations, because Oval shows up, and the squad tries their best to fight against her, whether it's Inej, Jesper doing his thing along with Toya, but they're all kind of getting their asses handed to him because Oval kind of does some blood bending. I mean, obviously, like, as a Duras, like, their main thing is like metal and iron, but look, I mean, unfortunately, there's blood and, I mean, there's iron and blood and stuff, so she's able to kind of pull on everyone. I mean, even like, what was it? Zoya and, like, I think Nina have rings or whatever, so she's able to use that to kind of weigh them down and keep their hands from allowing them to use their powers. I thought the battle and the end of it all would have come down to Jesper showing everyone what he really is and kind of going full throttle with his Duras thing. I think we're going to get that later on, maybe like, but in the season finale, we'll get it when the fight comes down to it. But no, like, this came down to Kaz finding out the weak heartbeat belonged to her lover, who is the real disciple. She, in turn, we find out is, what was it, Sancta something? She's the one who actually made the sword they're looking for, the one from the legend. She's been alive this entire time, and she fell in love with a thief, and they decided together that he would retire. And so she thought they were here for something else, but it's like, right, you're here just for the blade. I'm just going to stay here and live out the rest of my life with the person I love. Because Kaz was like, I was able to figure this out because I figured out your weakness. But for her, it's like, me finding someone to love is not a weakness. Because going through this world alone, a world so small, isn't worth it. But together, we're our own universe, And she's like, I will be here for him until he basically goes into the night sky, Because I love him that much. And obviously, speaks volumes to a lot of them. It speaks volumes to Jesper about where him and Wayland stand. Obviously, it strikes a chord with Nina, with, like, her and Matthias. And then there's also the situation with Kaz and Inej. So that kind of spoke volumes. Once again, because he continues to look at companionship as a weakness, like relying on people. Like, he relies on people, but once again, he still keeps his heart guarded. I mean, understandable. Like, his trauma growing up kind of contributed heavily to that. And so ultimately, Oval, she ends up giving the blade to Jesper, because it's like, right, I found the Sun Summoner. The Kerrigan, like, his darkness will reach here. It's not just going to start in Ravka. This is everyone's problem, so we need to take him down, including his shadow creatures. But gives the blade to Jesper because he's a Duras. It's like, you could have, like, used the buttons on your, like, you could have easily fought back, but it's because for so long he's hidden what he is, so he knows he's going to have to step up his game. Also, we found out that she has, like, her husband kind of, she's like, yeah, my first husband, kind of like, just kind of like it was a terrible marriage. Terrible husband makes a great table. I was like, Jesus, So it makes me wonder, like, how many times has she been married? Was she only married twice? It's like being with the disciple and her first husband, because she was never like, oh yeah, that's my first husband, this is my second. I guess it was kind of like, you're supposed to be here as a reminder of never letting that type of stuff happen to me again, because you sucked big time. So I'd rather keep you around as a reminder, as a table. But all of that was enough to inspire Jesper to kind of not live in fear. Once again, not to hide who he is. And he agreed, like, he's like, right, Wyland, you were right. And they make out. And this leads to a whole conversation between Nina and Zoya, because Zoya thinks, like, oh, Oval was stupid, like, for falling in love with the disciple. Like, what's gonna happen? Like, he's gonna die, and eventually you're gonna be left with nothing. But Nina's like, well, fine, I'll stay with my, like, man of fur or whatever, but eventually someone's gonna sweep you off your feet, Zoya, and then you're gonna, like, don't come looking to me when you're, like, looking for, like, oh, I guess this is what love is. Which almost makes me go, like, you don't think they're gonna try and set up the whole Toya and her thing? I mean, to be fair, she was in love with Kerrigan until she saw him for the monster that he is. Once again, it kind of took a while, but still. But, because she had made this whole point about, like, her, Nina betraying everything she knew for Matthias. It's like, was it even worth it now after everything you've lost to get here? You don't even have him because he's locked up in Hellgate, which I completely forgot to talk about last episode. Like, Pekka is kind of running things in Hellgate now because he beat up Matthias's cellmate, because the cellmate came after him because Pekka killed his brother. But the guy, like, Pekka in front of everyone beat him down, and Matthias wanted to jump in, but Pekka, like the other people, wouldn't let him. It became a one-on-one fight, and he stomped the guy out, beat the ever-living shit out of him, and he ultimately died, and Matthias ended up burying him in this episode. But it's like, yeah, Matthias is going to get his revenge, and it's going to be so sweet when you get your comeuppance, Pekka. You thought you got your comeuppance now, before it's like, oh, you're going to get it super hard from this Scale, and I hope he makes you suffer. We'll have to wait to see how that plays out, because Pekka has convinced, like, everyone in line to fall in line, because he's like, right, you stepped to me, I will break you, but if you work alongside me, I'll get you whatever you want. So we'll see how that ultimately ends up playing out. Once again, kind of obviously gets touched a tiny bit this episode because we see Matthias, but obviously filling in for, like, what I completely forgot to talk about last episode in that regard. But obviously Nina's going to put all that aside for right now, what she's feeling and her love and everything, because she plans on getting Matthias and running away and living there happily ever after together. But for now, I'll fight for Ravka. So. And Inej and Kaz don't fully admit what they saw. Initially, they're like, right, I didn't see anything. And Inej's like, I didn't see anything either. But for Kaz, it was like, right. He's like, for a certain point of view, you look at certain people as people who can push you under and drown you. But he also is like, it made me see a certain someone lifting me up. Obviously, the last person he saw before he snapped out of it was Inej, pulling him up out of the water. And Inej says the thing that she saw, what she learned from her vision, is that hope can be dangerous, that it can, how it can kind of tempt you and leave you weak and vulnerable, and she doesn't want that right now. And it's just kind of sad, all the Kaz pulling her away situation. This, which should bring them close together, is kind of, in fact, pushing them further apart, sadly. So we'll see if that can get rectified before the end of the season or not. But blade in hand, they are making their way back to Alina. That's definitely going to be interesting to see what ends up happening on that front, because now both armies are kind of, the first and the second army, well, the Grisha that are with Nikolai are, because it's like, yeah, the first army has a reservation about working with the Grisha after everything, but it's like, no, like, Zoya was there to help along with David, because Zoya ended up healing one of the people. And it's like, right, people had their reservations about the Grisha, but it's like Nikolai was like, no, we're here together, united against Kurgan. And Zoya, not Zoya, but Jinya, I might have been saying Zoya this entire time, sorry. Jinya has the eye patch. And I was like, hey, so it was her. I brought it up in a previous episode that I had seen some illustrations of what the characters look like. Once again, I don't know if they were like in some official capacity or was it just like fan art based on what the characters' descriptions are in the book. But yeah, like I couldn't remember if it was Zoya or Jinya with like an eye patch, and it's totally Jinya. She has an eye patch on her right eye now. So I was like, oh, cool, interesting. Well, I say cool and interesting, but it's actually obviously really sad and jacked up like the situation and, you know, how she got scars and everything because of Kurgan, but still. A lot of very, very interesting development. We've only got 2 episodes left of the season. It's definitely going to be interesting to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.